Hi, I'm Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Thanking you for checking out this Parents and Caregiver series brought to you by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. Yeah, you mentioned just now something that makes me think of my next question, Christian. You just mentioned two different time frames. You said you may be in there for a week or for a month. So I'm wondering, and I bet a lot of people are going to be wondering too, how long can they expect their loved one to be in a residential treatment program? I know it varies, but can you give us some kind of broad parameters for what someone might expect?
Yeah, it depends, right? And so if you go back, if we go back again, like we are talking about before, is say that patient puts your name down as someone that the doctor can contact. You can always you also have the right to call in and find out, hey, how long will the person, how long they be there for. So that's also a benefit that you have if you're one of the signed off people to contact and reach out to the place. But most substance use, like drug rehab facilities, approve usually 30 to 60 to 90-day stay. So it's usually goes in that 30-day increment. That's due to billing and sometimes disability and things of that sort and payments, but it's usually in 30 days. And it really just depends on how the patient's progressing. So for an inpatient facility, each patient is really on a voluntary or involuntary hold for either 72 hours, 1 to 2 weeks, or sometimes months, based on their presenting issues. There's something called a 1370 case, and that's based on the Welfare Institution Code, WIC 1370 of the law, which means that the patient is committed, they basically committed a crime, and they're basically a defendant at the time, and they're found mentally incompetent. So maybe they've committed a crime at that time. They were found, or they're going through the process to see if they're mentally incompetent. So if they're really found, mentally incompetent, they must be admitted into that mental health facility or that treatment facility. So until they're restored. So, and sometimes they're there for years. So, but they're also getting time credit towards their conviction or to their crime too. So that hospital time is going towards their jail time. So it really depends on how long they could be in there for.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like a lot of different variables there. And overall, though, 30, 60, 90, 30-day increments that families can kind of plan around that.
Absolutely. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about our young people a little bit right now, Christian. So many of them are dealing, as you know, with substance addictions. A couple stats I want to share. 8.7% of eighth graders have used illicit drugs in the last month. That one kind of floored me. The National Center for Drug Abuse Statistics reports that 47%, almost half of all teens, will have used an illicit substance by the time they graduate from high school, and an estimated 863,000, almost a million adolescents, are in need of substance abuse and addiction treatment, but they don't receive it. Given those stats and the need for residential treatment for youth, Christian, what's the probability of relapsing after treatment in a residential facility? And where I'm going at there, if I were the parent of someone that needed that treatment, I really want to know that they're going to get everything they need and they're going to be out of there and back in my arms, and I don't have to think about them going back. But something tells me that they might be looking at multiple stays in a residential center before they can successfully emerge. Talk to us about
Wow, those are big numbers. When you look at those numbers, those are pretty big. And the story, just looking at the numbers, that really between 50 and 90% is usually the relapse rate. It really, again, it depends on what we're talking about, whether it's substances or we're talking about mental health condition. But overall, it's between 50 and 90% of people who are addicted relapse at least once, for the first 4 years of sobriety. So, and most relapse many times. So after that initial time, it may happen several times after that. And triggers are usually the cause. And that, again, it could be something very small. It could be the smell of a drink, or a neighborhood, or the smell of a room when you walked in, a house that from your childhood, or the smell of a car, or it could be many things that could trigger you. Um, it's really difficult to avoid some of those things. So that's why it's really so common.
You talked about triggers. Before we move on, Christian, you and I had a whole conversation about trauma triggers, and that sounds a lot like what you taught us there. There are a lot of things that we wouldn't necessarily be thinking about. I've not had a serious substance abuse issue over the course of my life, thank goodness. But I'm very familiar with triggers, and I also can recall triggers that would prompt me to reach out for a shot of Jack Daniels in the middle of a week when I really shouldn't have been drinking. So I'm familiar with some of what you were talking about. Important stuff to be thinking about. Really appreciate you sharing it with us. I'm wondering about, we've talked about all of the, or many of the ways in which residential treatment is a positive thing. So now I've got to ask you the question, are there any downsides? And if so, what are the downsides to seeking treatment via a residential treatment center?
I think this is a question that really needs to be talked about, because there's, at the end of the day, there's stigma, right? We can't avoid it. There's a stigma there, and there's that perceived stigma, especially in communities of color, and it's contributed there for a lot of reasons. From Hollywood, from movies, seeing Arkham Asylum on Batman, and watching all these other movies, right? It just shows the depiction of these hospitals and these treatment facilities, and actually that word asylum alone, right? That was used back in the 1800s and early 1900s, for these hospitals seeking an asylum. So just the wording, the language alone can be very stigmatizing, which could be a downside. And also being admitted, goes on your medical record too. So, and some individuals may see it as a negative thing. And so in certain cases, it does take away some of your rights. For example, the ability to purchase a firearm if you're admitted and put on a 5150 hold. So that could take away one of your rights in terms of amendment. Also, confusing that confusion of the process, right? Just the navigating and where to go, who to call. That can be really a downside. Where do you start? And as we know, cost. Like, how much does it cost? Some people may not or cannot afford some of those services, even though Medi-Cal will cover a lot of your inpatient need services. But there are some things, such as some of the more expensive treatment, like eating disorders. Some eating disorders may not be covered in that treatment, so that's a very expensive. It could be sometimes 20 to 30,000 a month to be in a eating disorder clinic or a facility. So it can get really expensive. And most don't know their rights. That's another downside too. And, when they enter that facility, they may drop out. They don't have enough information, so they may have some kind of understanding or misunderstanding. And then I think really just breaking that perception of how those facilities look is the main goal.
Yeah, yeah. Did I make it up in my head, Christian? Did you mention Arkham Asylum a minute ago?
Yes, I did.
And my triggers as a Superman guy. The minute you said that, I kind of went to a different place. I think that mass media, a lot of times, there's that Arkham Asylum in the Batman mythology. There's a reference in one of all things, one of the Disney animated classics. I think it's Beauty and the Beast, where marketed for young children, and there's this scary scene where one of the characters is going to be hauled off to an asylum, and he even uses that word. We're going to go in and grab him. Let's get the horses and the torches, and it's very scary for young people. So I think there's a role that mass media plays in that stigmatization of residential treatment centers, which is what leads me to my final question for you today. How do we combat that stigma? I'd also think that even if it's not that extreme an example, if you've got a loved one that's going off to a residential treatment center, the neighbors are going to notice if 30 or 60 or 90 days go by and the person in your care isn't there anymore. And sometimes people might freeze up at that and be reluctant to share openly. So how do we go about combating stigma that still exists around residential treatment centers, especially when we're talking to families, neighbors, and friends?
Those are good points that you brought up. And I think just first with depiction, right, of TV and television, which we can't control Hollywood and media, but just if there were other scenarios and situations where they did depict where they show a family member kind of going through something and maybe having a psychotic break, and instead of showing this white van pull up with straight jackets and these big guys in all white grabbing them, right, and throwing them in the back of the van, and it says mental hospital on the side, showing them more, trauma informed, more trauma responsive, showing them, taking them to a safe place or a quiet place, or showing someone mitigating the issue with them or working with them, trying to de-escalate the situation. That's just from a visual media standpoint. I think from the other standpoint, it's just understand that an inpatient facility is not jail. I think a lot of times in the community, we think it's a jail, and all of our rights are being stripped away from us when we're being held, in this place where we're not being fed, and there's no water, there's no, supervision. And so that's also another thing that in terms of destigmatizing in the community, having a conversation too, that the facility is no different than the hospital. I think that's the first thing. I always make the analogy, right? When you break your arm, you know where to go. But when you experience anxiety, some people don't know where to go. It's the same process. It's you need treatment, regardless if it's a physical injury or mental. Same with this. It's a hospital. It's not it's not an asylum for just crazy people. It's an asylum to help you, rehabilitate, and also providing education to the community that discharging from these facilities is based on your healing, right? It's your progress. It's the work you're putting in, along with the doctors and the specialists. So you have a say in all the things that are going on. They're just not going to hold you back when they see that you're progressing. So that's something else too. And that's more strength based, where you're looking at strength based approach of them improving.
And we've got a whole video talking about strength-based approaches, Kristen. And so we're going to encourage people to go to that Brother Be Well platform and check that out. You just wrapped it up really well for us, my friend. If you break your arm, you know where to go. If you got a mental health problem, you know where to go. And if you got to unpack a topic like this, we know where to go. We go to Christian Jacobs, marriage and family therapist, Brother Be Well clinical advisor. Dude, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you for taking the time to have this conversation.
Oh, absolutely, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Always good to see you, and we'll see you soon. And we'll see you soon, thanks to at another one of these videos, rather. We want to thank, first of all, our sponsor for these videos, Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative. That initiative boosts access to mental health support, and you can learn all about it at their website, bluesky.blueshieldca.com. For our podcast listeners, I'll give it to you again, bluesky.blueshieldca.com. Another website I'll tell you about is our own brotherbewell.com. If you've enjoyed this video as a part of our parent and caregiver series, or you'd like to see videos or listen to podcasts on any one of a number of mental health topics, go to our website, brotherbewell.com. We're a membership supported service, but memberships are free. So you can take care of that right now. Go to brotherbewell.com, sign up for as a member, rather. Sign up for our blog as well. Give us your email address. And then when videos like these go live, you'll get 2 or 3 times a week, I believe, you'll get a notification in your e-box, and you can be a part of the Brother Be Well Brotherhood. So do all of that at brotherbewell.com. My name is Michael P. Coleman. I'm content director for Brother Be Well. I want to thank you for your time today. We take that very seriously, and we try to give you all the information you need to be well, and so that the brothers in your life will be well. I want you to do 2 quick things for me, please. Take great care of yourself and take great care of somebody else. Until next time, bye-bye.